Well, hello everyone, and I guess I can say Happy New Year as it's the first week of Advent, the beginning of a new year on the church calendar. On this first Sunday, this first week of Advent, as always, the theme is the theme of hope. And when I think and reflect about the theme of hope, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has observed, in particular in recent years, hope has been in short supply for many people, many families, many communities. In this polarized world full of anger, anxiety, violence, and despair, for many, holding on to hope can feel kind of like trying to grab a handful of sand, only to have it quickly and inevitably slip through our fingers, being unable to hold on to it for more than what seems like brief, sporadic moments. The prophetic voices we read about in Scripture often bring messages of hope, alerting listeners to the present and future hope awaiting those who respond and participate in God's work of redemption in a world in need of greater hope. In this week's Old Testament lectionary passage, the prophet Isaiah paints a beautiful picture of eschatological hope, a vision of the highest of mountains drawing many peoples to it. This vision of different peoples coming together does not incite hostility and violence, as it so often does in our world, but rather Isaiah gives a prophetic vision of an end to hostility, violence, and war. It's a vision that might at first glance seem so outlandish and otherworldly, given the permeation of so much war, violence, and bloodshed in the world, both in the days of Isaiah and today. And yet the hope of God for creation, as voiced by Isaiah and embodied in Jesus the Messiah, is a hope deeply rooted in love, which actively works for peace and harmony among the peoples of the world. The gospel reading for this week is the words of Jesus' Olivet Discourse in Matthew's Gospel, commonly known as the Little Apocalypse. Full of strange, fantastical imagery, apocalyptic portions of Scripture like this can and have easily been misunderstood and misapplied with such damaging effects. Unfortunately, much of our contemporary literature related to apocalyptic portions of Scripture, both here and in the book of Revelation, have been misguided in their literalizing of the text and viewing them through our modern-day lenses and world events. First and foremost, however, apocalyptic literature is ultimately meant to provide hope and encouragement to followers of the Jesus way during times of discouragement and crisis by sort of unveiling a spiritual reality behind earthly circumstances, assuring them that God will ultimately triumph over evil. The idea of unveiling of truths beyond what our finite minds and fragile lives can fully comprehend dovetails nicely with this week's film, It's a Wonderful Life. You'd be hard-pressed to find any reputable ranked Christmas movie list that doesn't have this 1946 classic at or near the top of the list. I think this is such a beloved, timeless classic because the rich themes and unveilings in the story echo the hope of this week's lectionary readings, giving us all opportunity to contemplate the value of life and the ripple effects of our choices, even the ones that seem insignificant. George Bailey's life and interactions with Clarence, his guardian angel, awaken us to the value of friendship, the reality of the purposefulness of life, and the truth that even when things don't go as envisioned, there is still the possibility that some good, even in the midst of tragedy and disillusionment, may bubble up. For George and us, when things are difficult, it's easy to run short on hope. Like him, we can see life through the tainted lenses of discouragement and despair. The miraculous change of perspective George receives is life-altering for him. Of course, in our case, such change in perspective doesn't come through the physical manifestation of a guardian angel, but whether it be in our private times of prayer and contemplation, the communal times of intentional reflection, worship, and conversation with trusted friends, or engagement with both Scripture and the rich truths to be found elsewhere in our experiences, including the viewing of films, these means of grace have the potential to keep us awake and aware of the divine presence both within and around us. Jesus' command to stay awake in Matthew 24:42 is given to a people group like George Bailey whose lives have literally been turned upside down. Things haven't turned out as they envisioned. It's also an invitation to us as we embark on this journey of Advent to intentionally stay awake and to stay attentive to the Spirit's presence in the midst of anxiety, suffering, and despair. And so as you reflect on the lectionary scriptures this week and this film, It's a Wonderful Life, take some time to think about and discuss with others the themes that most resonated with you. What perspective change might we need this Advent season to reorient our hearts and minds? Perhaps as we stay awake and attentive to the Spirit, we, like George Bailey, can come to the realization that in this interconnected world of complex relationships, each man's life touches so many others. And when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he?